Currently wondering if I was going to do another one of these videos. Surprisingly, yes. I will do more of these tier list videos. So, instead of doing Phasmophobia, since I probably have gone over that already, I'm going to, this time, to utilize the tf2 weapons in terms of how useful they are. So, we will start with the most first class, the Scout. Scout has a lot of different useful items, which can be pretty useful, but what items are useful and what items are not as useful. So we'll go over my research and evidence about all the weapons, and ranking them in each of these 5 ranks, or tiers, and I'll go over my personal arsenal, or top picks. Let me just rename it real quick, if I can. Personal arsenal. So we'll rename it that. So we're gonna rename it to that. So we'll first start with the primary items. First we have stock scattergun. Stock scattergun is the normal scattergun. It has 6 shots. It's the only gun that has it, aside from reshells, but we're not gonna mention reshells at all in any way or another. And it's overall gonna be the best type of, well, scattergun. So if you need a good type of scattergun, aside from Force Nature, as it only has 2 shots, then stock is your friend. So the stock scattergun goes to S tier. Next up, this is also everyone's personal favorite. Well, sort of, depending on what person you are. The Force of Nature. So Force of Nature is basically a weapon that has 2 shots, but it can also knock back more people and has more bullets on shots. So it's kind of, so it can deal slightly more damage, though if it wasn't, it wouldn't be if it wasn't for that damage penalty. So both the stock and Force Nature can pretty much do the same damage, but you can still deal a great amount of damage. And if you need to do more shots, then I would say stock would be good, but Force Nature is still kind of a good one. Everyone can still use it, so it's not right for everyone, but I'm going to put it in S tier. The next one we have is Shortstop. So Shortstop has 4 shots, and it also does allow you to shove people with a secondary fire. So you can mainly push people out of the way to deal with them easier. This is great if you're trying to deal with a demo that has the Eyelander or the Skull Cutter. And this overall is just gonna be kind of useful for trying to take down enemies, but it doesn't have a damage boost or anything, so you're still just gonna have 4 shots that do kind of the same damage as stock. So it's not the best, so we're gonna put it in B tier. And now for Soda Popper. This is one I have used and that I've tried very well enough. So the Soda Popper does behave quite similarly to the Force of Nature, or it does look like it, but it lacks the same stats as Force of Nature. So that means that it doesn't have the extra bullets, and also doesn't have the knockback speed, but it has faster reload speed, and can deal a hype ability, which allows you to, which as you deal damage, you can fill up, and then once you activate, can jump multiple times. It does say infinite jumps in the description, but you can only jump to about 12 or 13 times. So it's not quite infinite, but this thing does help with escapes. So if you want to escape, I would say this would be easy enough to deal with the Soda Popper. But it's still 2 shots, and doesn't really deal enough damage, and you can't push back enemies, so not the best. And it's probably, no one probably would want to use this, but I guess I would, so I'm putting in A tier. This is going to be pretty useful. Next up is the Backscatter. the backscatter is typically a pretty strange weapon, where if you get close enough and you shoot an enemy from the back, it deals mini crits. But you'll have to keep in mind, this is less accurate, so if you try to shoot at further range, it's not going to really help. So if you need long-range attacks, it's a much better idea to use pistols. But, hey, if you really need that perk with mini crits on back, if you're really all into stealth attacks, I guess the backscatter is good, but it's not perfect at all. It's probably a trashy weapon, so I'm putting it in D tier. Yeah, I mean, I've used it and it isn't great at all. Now for the last primary item is the Babyface Blaster. The Babyface Blaster does have a sort of boost mechanic where as you deal damage, you can run faster. So you'll start at about medic speed, and you'll slowly go up to past scout speed, which is kind of useful. But if you do take damage or you use double jump, then the speed will go back down. Also, if you use double jump, it just resets the boost all the way down to 0, and you're going back to medic speed. But sometimes you don't need to go so fast, since probably going too fast sometimes might screw you up. So, but this overall is not typically really good. I mean, I don't typically want to go medic speeds, and sometimes I do want to actually go fast, since going fast rarely screws you up as much as you might think. So Babyface Blaster, well, it's still gonna be useful. I mean, some people want to use it, so I won't go too harsh. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. So that is it for the primary items we got. So next section, in the secondaries, which are not really primaries at all. Of course, some people may use them as primaries. But first is Stock Pistol. So Stock Pistol is practically a pretty useful blaster, or pretty useful gun for long distance attacks as Scout. If you necessarily need long distance attacks, it's better to use for Stock Pistol. So you can deal a great amount, since you can deal 12 shots pretty easily at further ranges than you would with your scatter guns. So I'm gonna put it in right about A tier. I mean, it's not gonna really help you at all very much, but it's still kind of useful. Of course, I'm not going over Luger more because it's a reshell. No one cares about it. Next, we got Winger. Winger is kind of a utility, I guess, if that matters. It can deal more damage, but you do only get 5 shots out of it. So it isn't really that going to be reliable, but if you need more damage, and also the higher jump boost that it has, I think it would really help. Also, in X10 servers, or X100, whatever, this thing can really help. You can, like, go to the moon with it. So, honestly, if you need height jumps as Scout, Winger is going to be good. So, I am going to put it in A tier, along with the Stock Pistol. Next, we got the Pretty Boy Pocket Pistol. So this weapon kinda is useful, since it does heal you every time you shoot it. And so when you're playing on a Minecraft world or map that has the Headless Horseman that stays still, this can be useful for Health Factory, which is a kind of a thing I have done before, and it really does help. So the Babyfaces Blaster isn't really as bad as it seems. I mean, people don't use it, but it's actually really cool to use, since it does help you if you don't want to use Mad Milk. So, of course, I would kind of recommend Mad Milk, though. But, yeah, Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol is probably the second best, actually second place for best secondary if you don't want to use Mad Milk. So, I have no choice. I'm putting in S tier. 100% goes in S tier, no joke. Now, for the Mad Milk. This is a real lifesaver, as it stops you from burning. Also, if you hit people covered in it, then it heals you. And this is going to be a real lifesaver, And yeah, nothing else to add about it. Goes in S tier. Now for some other random oddity, if you can call it, the Atomic Punch. So the Atomic Punch, or the bonk if you are a nerd, is typically a drink item that allows you to be invulnerable for 8 seconds, giving you some time to try and escape. Though, of course, if you honestly need to really escape, it would be easier to do so with the soda popper. Even though it wouldn't really be a better idea, I would still kind of recommend it as a little escape plan, since that hype can really save you. But, of course, the actual disadvantage for the Atomic Punch is that it does give you slowness depending on how much damage you've taken while invulnerable. And since you become invulnerable, you cannot get the intel, you can't have points or anything like that you would without it. So, it's not going to be the best. It's actually a really bad weapon. I don't get why anyone would want to use it. I mean, people do for some reason. So, yeah, I mean, no hard feelings, but it goes in D tier. It's the worst. Like, it's the worst weapon you can even use. But next, we got the Criticala, or the Bonk Mark II if you are a nerd. Yeah, I mean, why would I consider it the Bonk Mark II? I mean, that wouldn't make sense. So this is like the Atomic Punch, but it actually can let you deal mini crits for about 5 seconds. But you do get marked for death for about 2 seconds all the time. So the entire effect can last about up to 7 seconds. And this is kind of useful. If you try to combine it with the Force of Nature, this can be kind of useful. But you do want to be careful. You can take more damage for 7 seconds as you're trying to use it. So maybe it's not going to really work, but it kind of is useful if you're trying to deal enough damage. So, it's this, I mean, it's still better than Atomic Punch, but not by much. So, I'll put it in C tier, along with the Babyfaces Blaster. Now, for the Flying Guillotine. Now, this is a throwable item, like the Mad Milk, and every time you try to hit someone, it causes them to bleed. And this can be kind of useful if you're trying to combine it with the Mad Milk. And this can potentially be useful. And if you throw someone at further range, the cooldown will drastically get reduced, which is going to be extremely useful. So, this is a kind of useful item, though it's not going to really be the best, since it can be hard to hit, and doesn't really, like, explode or anything. So I wouldn't necessarily advise it. So, maybe this wouldn't really be helpful in any way. But I mean, if you're trying to just have someone throw it, and then have someone else throw the Mad Milk, then that person who threw it can definitely get a heal boost. But aside from that, it's not really the best. So, we're going to put it in A tier. Now for melees, the stock bat. Just a standard bat you swing at people. Pretty important. So, I mean, sometimes you're going to need melees. So, honestly, melees are your choice. But of course, stock doesn't have anything really important at all. So, it's just a bat. So, it goes in D tier. Why would I do that? But yeah, typically not that important at all. In any way. Now for the Atomizer. Now, the Atomizer is kind of unique in itself, as it allows you to jump as it gives you an extra jump. So you can do 3 full jumps total. Or 30 or 300, 3000 if you play X10, X100 servers. So if you need more jumps in X10 servers, you can definitely use Atomizer. But of course, if you're playing X10 servers, I would recommend the Winger's jump boost, since you can, like, jump pretty high. So yeah, just determine how high you can go. So, gonna put the Atomizer in B tier. Now for the Boston Masher. This is kind of my personal. This is one of my personal favorites. Not really, but if you try to hit an enemy with it, it will bleed. Unless you don't hit anything, then you hit yourself, which is the major disadvantage of using it. So it's not gonna be really useful. I mean, it's just pretty difficult to use at all. So, but it can be useful sometimes. So I will put it in A tier. Now for Candy Cane. This is gonna be rather useful for survival, I guess, if you're trying to survive. But what it does is every time you kill someone, with or without it, it drops a small health pack that you can pick up and restore some health. That's not really much to add, but other than that, it's just the stock bet. But survival is all that matters for Scout, so this is probably gonna be useful, but I wouldn't really use it, so I'm gonna put it in C tier. Now for one that's kind of worthy in Man vs. Machine, the Fan of War, which is, you know, the gunby weapon. If you don't know what a gunby is, well, here. Gunby, right here. That's a gunby. Don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, this typically lets people get marked for death, so they take mini crit damage. So this can potentially be useful for MVM when you're trying to deal with a giant enemy. So if you're playing a Scout, definitely use this in MVM. So, without a doubt, this will go in the S tier. Now for one no one ever wants to use. The Sandman. So, this one allows you to launch a ball, which slows people. It doesn't stun people anymore, it slows people. So, if you had used it before, I know you're probably sad that it doesn't stun people anymore. But yeah, this was, I mean, since we had that sort of change for almost 4 years now, since, like, the Jungle Inferno, then it's pretty weird to just realize why it slowed people, that only slows people. Like, this was, like, better when it was first released, but now it's gone. Valve dropped the ball. So, and this even lowers your health, and that's just weird. I mean, if you're gonna be a real hardcore with in X sensors, I mean, I get you can use it, but if you're just using it, you're just weird. So, sorry Sandman users, you really don't know how to fight. Sandman's in D tier. Nothing else I can add to it. Now, this is a good one, the Sun on a Stick. This is what it is. Now, it's not available in the store like a lot of the others. It's rather a promo item, so you can get it either playing the Rift game, not to be confused with the Oculus Rift games. That's different. Just the game called Rift. Let's see if it's a thing, actually. I'm pretty sure it is. Let's see. Okay, it is. Yeah, it is. So if you played it, you'll get this in genuine quality. But you can get it by drops or the Steam Community Market. And typically, if you hit people burning it, if you hit burning people, it will deal more damage. But if you try to get burned by pyro whilst holding it, then you take less damage by fire. This can be useful if your team, if the enemy team has more pyros, but if you don't have pyros, it behaves much like the stock bat, so it's not really that important to you. So, it's gonna be in C tier. Honestly, why would you use it? I will never know. Now, this is my personal favorite melee for a reason. This is Rap Assassin. If you know me, you know I like this one. Yeah. What am I doing anyway? But yeah, the Rap Assassin is like sort of an upgrade to the Sandman, where you can launch a glass ball that inflicts bleeding. This is effectively a safer version of the Boston Basher, since you can bleed people from a distance. And combine with Mad Milk, since you can combine that like the Boston Basher. And you can basically heal, you can basically constantly heal, and this is very useful. So yeah, Mad Milk and Rapsassin, the best combo I've ever thought of. So, without a doubt, this belongs right in the S tier. No joking. Okay, actually, I'm not feeling comfortable for this one. Let's name it. So now we're gonna go over top picks now. So here are top picks that we're gonna add. So here are 2 top picks that we're going to add. So we're going top picks. I'm gonna name them both top picks. These are my personal top picks. I'm gonna name it for. So we're gonna do this for. We're gonna do it for let's see, what can we do this one? What can we do this one for? So we can put it for the MV. So put this for STND, means standard, you know, CTF or anything, capture the flag, whatever you're saying. So the top picks I would suggest are, so here are top picks for normal gameplay. Number 1, stock scattergun. This is pretty useful, 6 shots, so it's gonna be pretty important if you ask me. Number 2, Mad Milk. I would kind of think this would also be a useful item. This is a real lifesaver. I would truly use it. And number 3, the melee Rap Assassin. I mean, seriously, it's my favorite. Why would I deny it? But the next one we have now is for MVM use. So here are topics for Man vs. Machine that I would suggest. Number 1, the Force of Nature. Because you can deal knockback, and this is kind of useful if you try to increase the clip size, so I would kind of really recommend it. Number 2, Mad Milk, though, of course, this weapon arguably goes in both. So Mad Milk goes in both, since Mad Milk does become a pretty bigger weapon for the slow on target ability you can get. And number 3, Fan of War, since you can arguably deal enough damage to enemies. So this is going to be useful just when you want to kill a giant easier, or, you know, yeah, giants. You can't mark tanks for death, right? Alright. Yeah, nothing else. But yeah, that is yet another tier list. The 4th time I'm doing a tier list. So hopefully you find this video useful. And if you do, remember to like, subscribe, ring the bell, comment what I should do next for a tier list, and I hope you enjoy.